All righty, so here we are being recorded. We are with Wes Parker, Bucky Sparkle, Dave Wiskevitz, and myself, Jen Mullins, to discuss 1146 through 1148 North Pleasant. So what is it that you would like to do there?
Wes, do you want to lead or?
Sure, I'll start. We recently went through the process of demolishing, removing the carriage house there that's to the south of the driveway. And it was a historic building, tried to save it. My family's been at the property since the 1930s, and my wife and I purchased it from my grandparents in 1993. And I had a bunch of people look at it to try to save it, and everybody was just like, no, it's not worth it. And I could only get one car in there, and that led to when we had visitors, which is fairly frequent, basically filling up the grassy area towards North Pleasant Street with cars. So you've got, your lawn full of cars. So what we're proposing to do is, now that that building is gone, is put in a garage, 2 bays plus a outdoor port parking area. So I should be able to accommodate about 4 cars, which would be up basically even with the front of the house. So there would be a short drive to the garage. There would be a second floor, 2 bedroom unit. The upstairs is, I think, 935 square feet, but then there's 120 feet or 200, 120 feet, I think, of mudroom space on the bottom floor when you walk in. 2 bays, and that's the bulk of it. Bucky, am I missing anything substantial?
No, nothing substantial. We can bring up the site plan. I presume Jennifer has it. If not, I can share my screen. Happy to do that.
Yeah, why don't you here? I'm going to give you just because it's too many balls for me to juggle, and if you've got it, go ahead and share it, and I can
All right,
stop share.
allow. All right, let me find my version. Here we are. All right, so this is currently rotated 90 degrees just because that's how the surveyor set it up, and I haven't taken the time to change it yet. In which case, north is to the right of the screen. And, the house and the driveway, Pleasant Street, is at the bottom of the screen. So you can see the proposed building, although I think Wes and we might juggle this around by a few feet, but the general concept area is to come off the existing driveway, because there's this really wide lawn area. The right of way is quite wide. The property line are these monuments here. So come off, and once we get past the sidewalk, have a little segue area to access the garages, as well as the covered parking area over here. And on top of this building would be the second floor dwelling unit. So that would be the additional third dwelling on the property. And then basically rebuild the existing driveway. I'm hoping to get some more parking back here. You can see the footprint of the old carriage house that's now been demolished. So we're planning on making use of that area, and then carrying the pavement up, probably repave everything while we're at it. Adjusting to the existing grades to the north of the existing buildings. We will, of course, have a little stormwater management area. Tentatively, we're looking at a rain garden approximately here. The slope, basically, the site, the front of the buildings drains toward the road, and from the front of the buildings, rearward drains down the hill. It's quite low as you get back to the pool area and beyond. So we're going to capture water off the existing roof. We're going to capture water off of the proposed roof and get that into a rain garden, 2B sized, And then overflow will go where it's currently going.
So what is the size of the unit above the garage?
I think it's 935 square feet of space above the garage that is occupied. It's two bedrooms, one bathroom, and then an open floor plan with a kitchen area and living space is one space. And then there is a stairwell going down that enters at the covered area. So I figure whoever is parking in the covered area would be the occupants. At this point in time, just background, building this because my daughter works at UMass. She it came back to us from New York City, and she's been inside our house ever since. She went out and was like looking to rent, and came back to us with what the rental prices were. And I'm like, let me see if I can do something. Why don't we get another unit? Because we need a garage. Why don't we put a unit above the garage? You can live there. If you move out, then it becomes rental space because there's demand in North Amherst, as everybody knows. Well, there's demand in Amherst for rental space. So that's the driver. The driver is really to get my daughter out of the house.
I'm telling.
She knows.
That's funny. So, uh, you know about the ADU bylaw, I trust, right? The
Yeah,
new
it's still
ADU.
something that I'm not very familiar with. So I would really like, from the source here, how that will impact the proposal and under what sections of the bylaw we're going to be submitting this permit.
Well, that was going to be my question. What sections were you hoping to be under? Because I think it's pretty limited here. You're already a duplex, and an apartment requires 3 units. So it's not a converted dwelling. So I think the only option is our current regulation through the state, which is the non-owner occupied ADU, because that allows it to be at least 1 unit to occur on any parcels that would allow a single family. But with that said, you could also be a 3 unit already, or a 4, or some residential use. So the only caveat to that is the ADU can't be any greater than 50% of the largest dwelling unit that's on the property. So if you can indicate that that house is at least 2,000 square feet internally, and this has to be measured from inside the wall surface of the exterior wall. So in other words, you take the perimeter of the main dwelling, the biggest dwelling, and you measure across in all directions and get the square footage. So like in what you're showing currently, you go from left to right, that's one dimension, and you go from front to back, that's another dimension, however that works out to get the square footage of that larger dwelling.
But
Okay.
then, Dave, wouldn't they have to stay 9,000 or 900 square feet or lower?
900 would be the
So you have
maximum,
to
but
get rid of 35 square feet.
yeah, no, but also the you couldn't be any greater than 50%, like I said. So potentially it could be less if the main house isn't large.
So the house internally has to have at least 1,800 square feet, twice the
At
900.
Right.
least, yeah, and which you may have because it looks like it's a pretty substantial structure.
Yeah, and I don't have an internal floor plan, and so I can't get
Yeah,
an
and
answer to you.
it's
And
not, if it's not footprint, it's going to be the habitable space. So it could be the 2 floors added together, but the largest of the dwelling area.
So
where it
So
shows
if I
here,
go on Zillow, not
Mhm.
knowing how they would know this, but
Yeah,
it's over 3,000 square feet.
yeah.
well, the
But is
property
that
card shows too. Let me just see what it says on the property card.
is that specific to one dwelling? Do you know, or is that the entire?
That's the entire dwelling, but I do
Yeah.
know that it's over 3,000. I think it's 3,200, and I
Three,
do know
the property card has living area as upper story 1,190, first floor 2,301.
Right, and so that second dwelling is 1,100 square feet.
Yeah, as I would say, I would say the first and second of the front dwelling is probably about 2,000. So you're probably in the ballpark for doing what you want to do, but we would need confirmation of that.
Okay.
But with that said, it really depends on the design of your ADU as well, because if it's located under a roof section, it would have to be what's deemed habitable space. So you could be under a slope, for instance, that is only 2 foot tall, so that's not considered part of that. It would be
So,
up, it'd be 5 foot tall and higher.
so one thing that we're doing, so the dimensions that I'm giving you are based on the plan that I purchased, but I'm using the builder from across the street, Michael Holden.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know him, but
Yep.
he's got a similar setup to what I'm doing. He's basically going to have 3 units. But what I'm saying is he's doing a type of construction where he's got dual 2x4s and very, very thick walls
Yep.
that are making it super insulated. So if we do that construction on this floor plan, I guess presumably we could lose a bunch of square footage and that would help us out. Is that correct?
That is correct. And so you would have to have him do that, or whoever do that calculation. Like I said, it's the face of the interior part of the wall. So
Okay,
you could have a wall that's 12 inches thick, and
okay,
we're only looking at the inside dimension
okay,
or from that starting point.
okay. And so that I understand this too. It's the upstairs unit, and do I have to calculate the stairway and the mudroom where you enter? Is that considered living space or is that?
Well, whatever is considered habitable space. So I believe that is defined as that, like the mudroom would come into play if it's insulated and part of that unit.
Okay,
But I mean, Dave, you referred to it as non-owner occupied, but I think Wes lives there, don't you?
yes.
But on the, is that in the building or is that on the property where the owner would live?
So the state law or regulation says it can be non-owner occupied. Can be. It doesn't mean it has to be.
Okay, yeah.
It's just to allow people to be able to have say a duplex that they don't live at, to be able to create another dwelling. So now they have 3 non-owner occupied dwellings, but it doesn't prevent you from living there. It's not a requirement to not live there.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a benefit to be living there, at least for us. But with that said, I believe the duplex I think it had an owner occupancy requirement. So
So
there should be an owner.
that is correct. So certainly in the day, there was the owner occupancy requirement when we built that unit.
Hmm.
People have told me since, and I don't, that, there's been changes for where we are in the town and that requirement no longer exists. We've got a lot of, and maybe it's, maybe again, specific to me, that requirement doesn't go away. But there's certainly other buildings all around me that are not owner occupied, which have a lot of occupants.
Yeah, so you have a special permit in place. We need to abide by that regardless of what the zoning is doing. You would have to take steps that would remove the owner occupancy,
Okay,
basically modifying your special permit in
okay,
relation to the current zoning, if that's the case.
okay.
So just for our, discussion's sake, we'll just say that it's owner occupied, it's fine, so no problem. So we don't address the special permit with the ADU being proposed as through the state regulation. You would not be able to do an ADU through our zoning because it needs to be an owner occupied single family in order to get the ADU at the 1,000 square feet. So so I think by process of elimination, we're down to what we're talking about, which is the protected ADU is what it's called. And that's the category through the state.
So this isn't then, I guess I'm a little confused in terms of,
Hmm.
as I'm applying for a permit here. Since this will be the first time I'm going to be working under this state law, this is still a special permit, I am assuming, yes?
Well, no, that
No,
is,
it's not.
it's, nope, exactly. There's no special permit required here, at least for this unit. If they decided that they wanted to do a second ADU, they would have to get a special permit.
Okay,
But this new regulation, it's an exception to what our Amherst zoning has currently. But there are, some exceptions here or conditions where you need to be a certain size and, um, things like that. And it's
okay.
restricted to the main house, dependent on the main house.
All right, and then, so no special permit, then you would still need a rudimentary site plan and, a
Yep.
cleaned up version of what we're looking at now, and it goes straight to the building department.
Yeah, so everything you've done already is exactly what we'd be looking for. Basically follow the plot plan guidelines.
Okay.
We're gonna want to know and a little bit more because we need to know the existing, or the square footage of the existing house, the larger dimension or the dimensions of the larger unit, that kind of thing.
Okay, we can tabulate that. That's not a big
And,
deal, and sounds like it's gonna save Wes some money on my end.
yeah,
And
you've
you can
got
go
all,
to Maine.
yeah.
This is not the project. I'm just kidding.
I don't know. I don't know. I might still need you, Bucky, for emotional support. So,
Yes.
I have a question, and I don't know if we can answer it here or not.
Yep.
So I'm understanding there's a 900 square foot limit, and I'm understanding that we have to. Does that mean that there cannot be any heat in the garage?
That's not living space, so you can do whatever you want as a garage if you want a little shop space or whatever you want to do with it, or heat it for
Can there
keeping your
be
cars
laundry?
warm. Who
Can
knows?
there be laundry in the garage?
Uh, I suppose it could be for whose use? Would it be part of the ADU or,
That's what I'm saying. It would.
yeah. I mean, I would consider that to be part of the unit in a sense.
Okay. All right.
But if
All
there's a
right.
way to fit it upstairs, it'd be a little more convenient for the user.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
and less issue with trying to protect the, water pipes and things in a small area, unless you're heating the entire garage.
Yeah. Yeah. So we definitely have to look at that and how we're gonna deal with that. So I'm trying to make this like a zero
Hmm.
carbon, zero energy. So I'm looking at having utilities, heat pumps, probably heat pump, hot water heater, trying to do all that stuff. But I'm trying to understand, does that constitute livable space or not livable space? I guess I'm gonna have to read something to understand
Well,
what I can put in the garage.
yeah, I mean, if a garage is the garage, I mean, if that's how it's being used. I mean, if you're going to turn it into like studio space or something like that, that's a different story. But
All
if you're
right.
actually going to have overhead doors and you're going to be parking
Yes.
vehicles in there,
Yes. That is correct.
that's a garage. I mean, if you heat it and you like to, clean your car every week or something throughout the winter, then you can
Well,
certainly do that. But
I imagine that I'll have some piping and things that I will not want freezing, so there will need to be some level of heat in those
correct.
bays.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, you'd have to figure out how the water is getting from the ground up to your second floor and how you're protecting it.
Right.
But that get located in the middle of the building. It could be insulated. Maybe it's in some sort of a closet that you can put a small amount of heat in. Maybe in that closet is where your
Thank
electrical
you.
service is. So,
Okay.
you could, figure out a mechanical room maybe. Maybe you could do
Yep.
that.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
But I think that's really the only choice in that particular area, the way you're doing it. Had you tacked it on to the existing building, we could talk about more of an apartment or something like that where we would, but then you're leading it to sprinklers. So it's kind of a, catch
Yeah.
22 as to
Definitely
which
not
makes
doing
more sense.
sprinklers.
And that's
Trust
not where
me.
you want to go. Yeah.
No.
So, And so
Okay.
far, I think you would be one of the first cases if this moves forward. I think there may be one other that we're looking at, but where it's a duplex associated with an ADU.
Mhm.
So, okay,
You go
now,
ahead with,
what,
yeah,
what
I'm
if,
set.
so last question, what
Mhm.
if, does it matter if there is a owner living in the new structure? Does that matter?
Under the current regulation, it doesn't matter if there's an owner anywhere on the property. Well,
Okay.
I take that back. Your duplex requirement does require
Yes,
the owner.
got it. Yep, okay.
No, the owner does not have
It
to
can
live
be
in the other.
in any of them.
But as far as an owner being in, okay, there could be an owner in any one of them and that counts.
Well, you know, it's an interesting question because the duplex has its own special permit. So we'd have to think about that. I think that's
Oh, so
Or,
you
yeah,
might
a
have to
question.
have
I
that
think it's a question.
extinguished.
Yeah, yeah,
right, which is not something that we need to pursue at this point in the
yeah,
project, but maybe somewhere
right.
down the road, that'll
Yeah,
happen.
I mean, yeah, it's very possible.
Yep,
Yeah, you'd want to
But
extinguish the special permit.
when you do the ADU, we will be specific about this being the protected ADU, non-owner occupied requirement. So at least that will be covered no matter what. Um, You'll have to discuss how the duplex happens in the future, but
okay. Okay, I'm good. Bucky, you're good?
I am. Looks like this is going to be a little easier than we thought, assuming your building, has the square footage you were hoping. But your worst case is you might have to squeeze down that structure a little bit, or just pad more insulation in there. But
Yeah.
yeah, and it depends on design. Like I said, if it's under a roof line versus um, a flat roof, big difference.
yeah, yeah.
What needs to be included.
And I know the duplex footprint is 2,500 square feet, so it's a good start for
Mhm.
basically 2 floors of what I'm assuming is mostly habitable space. But Wes, you'll have to do a little bit of homework on that.
Yep.
Come up with a real sketch of the inside, which gets
Right.
awkward. But I think you're gonna get what you need here.
Okay, all right, so I have that action.
And keep in mind the ADU will require 2 means of egress as a dwelling. So you may have an internal stair. You could do an external stair, if that makes sense, or you could have 2 internal stairs, but as remote as possible.
And when you say as remote as possible, like,
Well, there's no benefit to having a door that's side by side or
I
2 doors side
understand
by
that,
side. Yeah.
but what I run into in this
Yeah.
design is there are bedrooms which
Yeah.
are probably, unique to whoever is in that bedroom, so to put an
Right.
egress out of a bedroom is probably not appropriate. And then, yeah, because it's a single large living space, there's not gonna be a lot of separation with
Right.
another stairwell.
Yeah, I'll come up with your plan, or if you already have a plan, and then we can look at it. It's hard to imagine it or even try to figure out a different way till we can actually see it. So
Maybe
Okay,
your covered area becomes an exterior deck with a staircase down to grade.
yeah, could
yeah,
But possibilities.
okay.
All
Well,
right.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much.
thank you.
And then just, keep in touch if it ends up that your plans are ready and you just want, it would be obviously Dave, not me, to look at them before you, want to submit the building permit, just let me know and we can set that up.
yep.
Very good.
Sounds good.
All
All right.
righty. Have a great
Yeah,
weekend,
Thursday, David.
everybody.
Yep.
Hey,
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Yep. Bye.
Now.
Bye. Thanks, Dave.